friends, I'm Isabel, and today's video was supposed to be about underpainting and gouache, but I got derailed by the process of this piece. In last week's video, I used this bright pink color to paint figures, and I wanted to try an underpainting with that same pink color. I haven't used an underpainting before, and I wanted to try it out to see how it would affect my painting process, because I've seen underpaintings used a lot in oil painting and gouache and acrylics even. And some people swear by them, so yeah, I wanted to try it out. For some context, I'm usually a watercolor artist, so underpaintings aren't a super common tool due to the transparency of the paint. You know, if I tried to layer a bunch of paint on top of this pink, things would get pretty muddy and dark really fast. But hey, you know, it could be fun to try an underpainting with watercolor someday. I'm going to get back to the actual painting process in a bit because first I want to talk about what this painting means to me, or really what a lot of my paintings mean to me, and you know, how I figure out what a painting means to me. Most of the time I don't know what a painting means when I'm creating it. Usually my paintings are pretty quick, or an idea pops into my head and I develop it a bit further in my sketchbook and then I paint it. So I don't typically have a set meaning to the painting before I start. I don't go into a sketching session with the goal of making a painting that means a certain thing, if that makes sense. I don't really incorporate a lot of intentional symbols or metaphors. They just kind of show up. To me, painting is a way to release the emotions and thoughts that I was only aware of at a subconscious level, and I often don't realize the meaning until I come back to a painting weeks or even months later. My paintings are a snapshot of what I was thinking and feeling at the time, but when I'm in the moment, I can't always tell what they mean. It's a bit like dream interpretation, except I let future me decode things instead of an outside person. With this painting, the meaning came to me as I was painting. I think I was able to think more about it while I was painting because the topic is one I'm familiar with, so I didn't have to focus on the actual process as much, and I had space to think about what the painting meant. In this painting, I gravitated towards my tree people again. If you've been around for a bit, you'll have seen them before. One of my first videos is a tree dude, the one about folklore and inspiration. I'll link that in the card. I think it's my second video. I ended up painting a tree person because I wasn't sure how much the underpainting would disturb my painting process, and I wanted something that I didn't have to think about too much. The colors in these tree people are usually fairly monochrome, and there are not really any complicated details. This concept has always intrigued me, and it's what I tend to draw when I want to create, but I don't really know what to make. It's easy to reach a flow state with this, and that's what happened with this piece. I felt like time just stopped for a bit, and I was kind of shocked when I saw that I had 2 hours of footage and it was dark outside. It felt good to just create without really thinking too much. I was able to turn off my brain and just paint for a bit. I felt a release afterward, like I'd managed to relieve some of the things that have been weighing on my heart. Specifically anxiety about the future and regrets about the past. As I reach the end of my junior year of high school, I've been thinking a lot about growth and the environment that surrounds me. I've lived in the same town my entire life, but I've changed so much as a person, even just in the last year. I guess that's how growing up goes, but it's kind of astonishing to me to read my old diaries and whatnot, because I feel like a completely different person. And a lot of that has come from just growing up, but it's also the result of tons of introspection and self-work. I also feel this immense pressure to keep growing. I'm not satisfied with where or who I am. And I'm a pretty critical person, especially towards myself, so it's pretty hard to just be happy with the current moment, as hard as I might try to do that. I nitpick every little detail and try my hardest to be perfect, whatever that means, even though I know logically that that's unattainable. I'm always disappointed in myself, always striving for something more. And reaching the end of the year and beginning college applications has pushed this unhealthy mindset even further, especially because I've spent the past year and a half at home, doing none of the typical junior year things, and I know that isn't my fault at all, and everyone else is in the exact same boat, but I can't help but beat myself up. I can see that yearning reflected a lot in this painting. It's kind of strange how obvious it is. The branches are reaching out of her head into the top right corner, but they almost feel like they're fragmented pieces of her skull. I know that sounds kind of gory, but to me it looks like her skull is unraveling and forming these branches that pull away and cut up the sky. The underpainting really added to this effect in the end because I ended up painting the background around the branches, and I don't have teeny tiny brushes, so little bits of pink still show through around the edges. The cutting effect that the branches and the sky have is another layer to the painting, which at first glance seems kind of peaceful and more positive. Not saying that growth isn't positive, it definitely is, but it's also a painful process. To grow, you have to break through the current version of yourself, as well as the expectations that people have based on how you've acted previously. It's really hard to change, even if it's for the better. So, as much as this painting shows the yearning to grow more, it also shows the pain of growth and the fragmentation and recreation of who you are. I've enjoyed watching this concept of the tree people evolve with me throughout the past year or so of painting them. The first one was quite simple and was actually one of my first attempts at watercolor. The second tree person was a little one in my sketchbook from the beginning of quarantine, reflecting the hope that I was trying to mask my fear with. That time was so uncertain, as I'm sure we all remember, and I was trying my hardest to be hopeful and positive, just to hide all the anxiety. I painted that one on the first day after school shut down, meaning to paint every day in quarantine as a way to stay mentally healthy and use the newfound time efficiently. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen. The third one was the Leshia, who resonates with wise loneliness. That was the one that I painted in that one video. The fourth tree person was painted over the summer when the forest fires were raging across my state. The sun was orange and I couldn't breathe outside, and I thought things would never get better. In that painting, the trees take precedence over the face. There's a smoky sky that obscures the forehead, or rather, is the forehead. In that one, the trees aren't part of the portrait itself. They're separate while the portrait fades into the background. To me, this reflects the overwhelming smallness I felt at that time. I couldn't help the world, and I was stuck in the monotony of my bedroom for days on end. I painted the fifth and most recent tree person in late November and early December 2020, when the days were dark and rainy and cases were peaking, so I wasn't really seeing any friends or going outside, and I felt immensely lonely. I named that piece Forest King because the trees looked like a heavy crown. The darkness of that piece is evidently reflecting both the darkness of the time of year and the heaviness that I felt inside. And when I painted that one, I didn't have a meaning in mind. I wasn't trying to work through anything consciously, I just felt like I needed to paint that, and what emerged reflected my mental state, as do most of my paintings. The piece I'm painting in this video came pretty easily to me. I wasn't intending to paint a tree person, but when I was looking at the face sketched on the paper, covered in bright pink paint, I immediately started mixing up a dual cool green and began drawing the brush across the page to make the branches. I didn't even really stop to think about it, I just started painting. And then I kept adding branches and more branches and more branches until they felt almost claustrophobic. And maybe I'm reading too much into my pieces, and maybe you don't see what I'm seeing, but I think that painting will always be an effective tool to process the emotions that I can't put into words. Because I don't really have an internal monologue running at all times. I'm not constantly processing thoughts, if that makes sense. It's just kind of vague ideas of thoughts that I understand subconsciously, but I can't access readily. So painting helps to translate some of the mess so that I can understand it, and maybe you can too. I used to write a lot of diaries, especially in middle school and early high school, and I kind of stopped doing that around the time that I got really into art, which is interesting. I think art kind of became a different mechanism for translating my thoughts. The thing I love about art is that you don't have to associate the same meaning that the original artist does with a piece. Once I paint something, it can have a million different interpretations for a million different people. And maybe I'll look back on this piece and see something completely different in a few years. More often than not, I can remember what I was feeling when I painted something. So paintings have become my time capsule and kind of replaced that diary, or they've replaced the benefits of a diary, I guess. But yeah, sometimes when I look back at old paintings, I can see something different on top of that time capsule. And it will be really interesting as I get more and more into my years of art and look back on these earlier pieces. I'm excited to see what they mean to me. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on what this painting means to you, or what any of my paintings mean to you, because yeah, I enjoy using painting as a medium to connect with people in ways that words can't often do. There's a vulnerability to painting that I try to capture a bit here on this channel, but there's some things that painting can say that you just can't say with your voice. I hope that I was able to make some connection with you. Let me know what this painting says to you. And maybe next week I'll actually make a video about underpainting, or sometime in the future I will. I promise I'll do that. All right, have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, and I will see you later. Bye bye.